welcome to Homestead for a Living. Back in 2020, when my livelihood of about 10 years was shut down violently, under threat of violence at least, under the guise of containing a seasonal illness, I found myself not only without a means of making a living, but really without a means of finding another way to make a living. I didn't have a lot of skills because I had been specialized into being a musician for so long, and there weren't a lot of jobs that I could do because most jobs were requiring compliance with a lot of silliness, like absurd tests that weren't accurate and untested shots that would prove to be very detrimental, and wearing silly masks and all sorts of things like that. So I really had to scramble and find a way to put food on the table. Now, I had already begun homesteading at the time, but I really began in earnest when I realized that my ability to eat food might depend on my compliance with things I wasn't going to obey. And so I started selling anything and everything that I could from my homestead. I also started making rainwater catchment barrels at that time, and so I started using Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist to sell them. But I also had to bring a lot of things onto my property. I was starting new animals, and I had to go out and get compost and topsoil and manure because I just didn't have a lot going yet. And so I began a habit that I've continued up until now and really expanded, which is going out and doing kind of a trade route, almost as if I'm in the 16th century in Africa and I'm grabbing some ivory and gold and I'm running up with my camel up to Arabia and Asia, and I'm bringing back silks and spices, except of course I'm using a vehicle, but it's really kind of the same idea, which is you leave with a full vessel and you come back with a full vessel. It's very efficient, particularly if you have to expend energy, fuel, time to both leave and come back with stuff, and everyone you transact with, including yourself along the way, comes back richer than they were. And so now I do it about once a week, and so I'm doing that today. It's about a 200-mile route that I'm doing today, and I will be bartering a lot, trading a lot. I try to avoid using fiat, although I do use fiat sometimes, but of course it's better to render unto Uncle Sam that which is Uncle Sam's. And so I try not to use fiat because that's his, but my fruit trees and such are not. And so I'd rather not have 25% of my capital stolen with every transaction. And so I would rather use as little fiat as possible. So that's what's fun about this, is you can do a lot of bartering and you develop a lot of great relationships and you build your own resilient, completely independent trade network. That's also important for other reasons. One reason is which I can't really use our local farmers market to sell my farm goods because our farm market complies with tyranny, and they see themselves as policemen, and so they enforce things like inspections by criminal organizations like the USDA of nurseries, and I'm not going to partake in any of that kind of un-American criminal activity. You know, my property is sovereign, and I have property rights, and I'm not going to be giving them up anytime soon. And so this way of transacting is completely free, particularly because we don't yet have rolling roadblocks to control commerce. That might come someday, but in the meantime, this is a very free way to trade. It's also really good for those who don't have a retail location, or they're just trying to get their farm or homestead going or their business going. So I just kind of want to talk about that and kind of what some of the things that I trade and barter, and it's everything under the sun. Fruit trees, elderberry. Right now I've got hazelnuts in the back. I've got Jerusalem artichoke tubers. I've got eggs, both for selling as food and then for people that want to incubate them because my eggs are fertilized. I'll be returning with milk. I'll be returning in the back. You can see there's a bunch of pots for plants for my nursery. I'm getting them for a fraction of the price that I pay brand new, and in doing so I met somebody who is a landscaper, and he will probably buy trees from me, and I asked him, what kind of trees do you normally buy? So now I know what to plant for him, and I know now what kind of ornamentals people buy. So I'm getting information, I'm building social capital, I'm building relationships, I'm acquiring living capital, I'm acquiring fiat capital. I'll stop at Kroger on this run too. I try not to, but every once in a while I need to obtain something I can't buy locally. In this case it's flour and things like that, and we don't have one in our town, and this is the only place I can get organic food if I have to actually buy, traditional organic grocery store food. And so it's very efficient, because if I have to expend this fuel for this 200-mile route, I need to do a lot of transactions to make it worth it. And so I'll probably do about half a dozen to a dozen transactions, both buying and selling and trading the whole way. So I'd love to hear what other people do in regards to this. Just to list some other things, I do live animals, chickens, I've bought and sold, and goats, rabbits, compost, manures, scrap metal, everything under the sun. Everything you can think that I need on my homestead or that I produce on my homestead. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you trade like this, or things that you want to try or you have tried, because it's a very dynamic world when it comes to trading and building your own little trade caravan route. And I think it's something a lot of us could do and have a lot of fun with, and will find very profitable. So hopefully that's useful to y'all. In the meantime, stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.